My father laughed into the courthouse hallway, like the whole building belonged to him. "You don't even have a lawyer," he said, loud enough for the people on the benches to look up. "You're bringing a plastic knife to a gunfight." Victor Mercer stood 3 feet from me in a navy suit that probably cost more than my car, his silver hair combed back, his watch catching the fluorescent light every time he moved his hand. Beside him was Conrad Pierce, his attorney, a man whose face smiled down from billboards near every freeway exit in the city. I was 32, wearing a thrift store blazer, with sleeves half an inch too short, my hands shaking so hard I kept them buried in my pockets. "Look at him," my father announced. "Works at a coffee shop, can't afford counsel. Now he thinks he's going to sue me." Pierce gave me a polished little smile. "Your father is willing to let this go. Caleb, drop it now." "I don't want him to let anything go," I said. "I want what he stole." My father stepped close enough that I could smell his cologne. "Showtime, son," he whispered. "Try not to embarrass yourself." But 6 months earlier, I had been holding my mother's hand when she died. My mother lasted 11 weeks after the diagnosis. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. By the time the doctors found it, they weren't talking about treatment anymore. They were talking about comfort, pain management, how to make the room quieter. She was 59, but in those last days, she looked smaller than age, smaller than illness, like the disease had been taking pieces of her when nobody was watching. My father didn't come during the final week. He was in Dallas, closing a development deal. Or that was what he told me. Mom heard the explanation through the phone speaker, squeezed my hand once, and nodded like she had stopped expecting him years before. "Read me the Frost poem," she whispered. So I read The Road Not Taken from my phone, while the monitor clicked beside her bed, and afternoon light came through the blinds in thin white lines. At 2:15 p.m. on August 12th, 2021, Dr. Helena Marsh declared Laura Mercer dead. I signed the certificate with a hospital pen that kept skipping. My hand shook so badly my name barely looked like mine. Then I called my father. "She's gone," I said. "I'll fly back tomorrow," he replied. "Did she say anything about the estate?" I stood in that hallway, still holding the pen. "She said she loved us." "Good," he said. "We'll talk about the trust when I land." Then he hung up. The funeral was beautiful, in the way expensive things are beautiful when nobody involved has any taste for grief. My father rented the largest chapel, ordered white roses by the hundreds, hired a string quartet, and invited half the men who had ever shaken his hand over a zoning permit. 200 people came. Most of them knew Victor Mercer as a developer before they knew Laura Mercer had been his wife. He stood at the podium and talked about her like she had been some elegant society woman who lived to support his empire. "She was the quiet strength behind everything I built," he said, dabbing at eyes that were not wet. I sat in the front pew and felt something harden in my chest. My mother had been a pediatric nurse for 30 years. She drove an old beige Corolla with a cracked taillight because she said sick kids needed donations more than she needed leather seats. She volunteered at the food pantry every Saturday morning. She hated country clubs. After the service, my grandmother Ruth pulled me into a side hallway. "Your mother left you the house," she whispered. "The one you grew up in. It's in the will." I could barely answer. "There's also the trust," she said. $65,000. Your grandfather left it for you. Your mother kept it separate." Then she pressed a key into my palm. "The house is yours. Caleb, don't let him take it." 3 weeks after the funeral, I went to Harbor Trust Bank to ask about the account my grandmother had mentioned. I expected paperwork, maybe a signature card, maybe some explanation of how to access money I hadn't even known existed. Instead, I sat across from a personal banker named Miles Kessler while he clicked through screens and slowly stopped smiling. "So the account is empty?" I asked. He adjusted his glasses. "Not empty. Closed." The word landed wrong. Closed by who? It says here, the funds were transferred on August 12th. 2021, into Mercer Development Group as part of an estate consolidation. My stomach went cold. August 12th. That was the day my mother died, I said. Miles looked genuinely uncomfortable. "I'm very sorry. How much?" $65,000. I stared at him. "That trust was in my name. There's an authorization attached." He turned the monitor slightly. "Signed by you at 2:15 p.m. For a second, the whole bank seemed to tilt. The carpet, the glass walls, the little bowl of free mints on his desk. "At 2:15 p.m., I said carefully. "I was at St. Catherine's Hospital, signing my mother's death certificate." Miles went pale. "Can I see it?" He enlarged the scanned document. The signature looked almost like mine. Almost. The C was too sharp. The last letter dragged too far. Someone had practiced. I leaned forward, my voice low. I need copies of everything. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed in my one-room apartment and called my father. He answered on the fourth ring. "Caleb," he said, like nothing in the world had happened. "How are you holding up? Did you transfer money out of my trust silence?" Then he sighed, slow and irritated. "I consolidated estate assets. That wasn't estate money, it was mine." "You're grieving," he said. "You're not thinking clearly. These matters are complicated. It had my forged signature on it." His voice changed. "Be very careful with that word. You stole $65,000 from me on the day Mom died. I protected family assets," he snapped. "That money was sitting there doing nothing. I moved it where it could actually produce value. It was not yours." A short laugh came through the phone. "Everything in this family is my money." The sentence hit harder than shouting would have. "You think your mother paid for that house? You think your grandfather built anything without my name attached to it? You work behind an espresso machine, Caleb. You don't understand wealth. You don't understand responsibility. I want it back. Then sue me." He laughed again, colder this time. "Oh, wait, you can't afford a lawyer?" The line went dead. I sat there with the phone in my hand, my face burning. And for the first time since the funeral, grief had somewhere to go. I started with Google because I didn't know where else to start. How to prove forged signature. How to report identity theft by family member. Can you sue your parent for stealing inheritance by midnight? I had 3 browser windows open, a legal pad full of notes, and a knot in my stomach that kept getting tighter. The next morning, I pulled my credit report. That was when the trust stopped being the worst thing. 17 credit cards had been opened in my name between 2019 and 2022. 17. I read the list twice because my brain refused to accept it the first time. Luxury department stores, hotel chains, casino credit lines, Brennan and Company, $4,180. The Langford Hotel, $8,760. Silver Crown Casino, $12,900. None of them were mine. My credit score was 420. I had been denied for a used car loan 6 months earlier and spent the whole afternoon feeling ashamed, like I had failed at being an adult. Now I knew someone had failed me first. I called every company I could reach. I filed disputes. I begged for application records. A few representatives hung up. A few sounded bored. One finally said the words that made the room go still. "All applications list the same originating IP address. It traced back to Riverside Tower, Unit 52A. My father's penthouse. I hadn't lived there in 10 years. I found Simone Reeves through an online forum for identity theft victims. She had spent 18 years in the FBI's white-collar crime division before going private, and her consultation fee was $200. I paid it with the only credit card that had not been poisoned by my father's name. We met at a diner off Route 6. Simone was in her mid-50s, gray hair pulled into a low knot, no makeup, no wasted movement. She read my documents while her coffee went cold. Finally, she looked up. "Your father is careful," she said. My chest sank, "but not perfect, so I can prove it." "Maybe, but not cheaply." She tapped the stack. "You need a forensic accountant, a handwriting expert, certified IP documentation, bank records, credit applications, and someone who can explain the money trail in court. How much? For a case like this, $30,000, if you're lucky." I almost laughed. "I make $14.50 an hour." I figured. She didn't say it cruelly. That made it worse. I walked out, sat behind the wheel of my 2005 Honda Accord with the cracked side mirror, and cried so hard my ribs hurt, because for the first time, I understood the trap. Being right didn't matter if I was too poor to prove it. I did not have $30,000. What I had was a library card, a printer that jammed every 6 pages, and the kind of anger that keeps a man awake after a closing shift. For the next 3 months, my life became work, sleep, evidence. I opened the coffee shop at 5 in the morning, smiled at people who complained about foam, then came home smelling like espresso and burnt milk and built a fraud case on my kitchen table. I requested bank statements. I filed disputes. I mailed certified letters. I called credit card companies until I memorized the hold music. I asked for application timestamps, IP records, branch footage, account notes, anything with a date and a signature attached. Most places ignored me. Some sent form letters. A few helped. Harbor Trust's branch manager, Carolyn Bell, mailed me certified copies of every transfer tied to the trust account inside the envelope. She had slipped a yellow sticky note. "This isn't right. Good luck." I kept that note taped above my desk. A retired handwriting expert named Dr. Lawrence Pritchard agreed to review the signature samples for $500 after I explained the situation. I paid him in 2 installments. His report came back 3 weeks later. High probability of forgery. Letter formation inconsistent with authenticated samples. I read that sentence until I knew it by heart. Then the records started lining up. Credit applications from my father's penthouse IP address. A casino account opened while I was working a double shift. A department store card approved while security footage showed me behind the counter at the coffee shop. I made timelines. I made copies. I highlighted dates until the pages looked wounded. 1 page became 10. 10 became 50. By the end of the 3rd month, I had stopped feeling helpless. I had built a paper wall between my father and his lies. The last request I filed was for the property records on my childhood home. My mother's will was clear. The house on Briar Lane belonged to me. 3 bedrooms, 1 narrow driveway, a maple tree in the front yard, with a scar from where I crashed my bike into it when I was 9. It was not valuable compared to my father's buildings, but it was the only place in the world that still felt like her. The county recorder mailed the packet 3 weeks later. I opened it at my kitchen table after a late shift, still wearing my coffee-stained shirt. At first, it looked like another fraud document. A deed transfer, my name, my forged signature. The house had been moved under my father's control, as collateral for a construction loan I had never seen, signed, or approved. Then I noticed the margin. The photocopy had captured a handwritten note, faint but readable, slanted along the left edge like someone had forgotten to crop it out. Forged Caleb's signature. He won't check the registry. If he asks, say it's for tax purposes. He trusts family. I stopped breathing for 3 months. I had been trying to prove my father was a thief. I called 6 attorneys the next morning. 4 never called back. 1 receptionist laughed when I admitted I could not pay a retainer. The 6th was Nathan Cross, a civil litigation attorney with an office downtown and a voice that sounded tired before the day had even started. "You probably can't afford me," he said, after 10 minutes on the phone. "I know," I said. "I just need to know if I'm crazy." He agreed to give me 30 minutes. His office was on the 18th floor of a glass building that overlooked the river. I showed up in my work shoes because they were the only decent ones I owned, carrying a cardboard box full of documents. Nathan did not make small talk. He read. For 20 minutes, the only sounds in the room were turning pages, his pen tapping once against the desk, and the traffic far below. Then he reached the margin note. His expression changed. "This," he said quietly, "is the kind of mistake people make when they've been getting away with things for too long. So I have a case." "You have more than a case. You have a timeline, motive, records, forged signatures, IP trails, and a handwritten admission. This is close to airtight." My chest tightened. "Will you take it?" He leaned back. "No, not because it's weak. Because I'd require a retainer you don't have. And a firm battle with your father would bury you in fees before trial. So what am I supposed to do? Represent yourself?" I stared at him. "My father has Conrad Pierce. Pierce is a corporate attorney," Nathan said. "He negotiates towers and tax abatements. Fraud in front of a judge is different. Your advantage is that your father thinks you're harmless." "I don't know courtroom procedure. You don't need to perform," he said. "You need to organize. Stay calm. Don't argue with your father. Don't chase emotion. Present facts in order and let the documents do the talking." He slid the margin note back to me. "Judges love organized plaintiffs. Caleb, build the cleanest binder that courtroom has ever seen." I bought the binder that same afternoon. Staples had 3 colors in the heavy-duty 4-inch size: black, white, and red. I picked red because I wanted to see it from across a room. I wanted it to look impossible to ignore. It cost $18.49, which was a stupid amount of money to me at the time. I paid anyway. Then I spent the next week turning chaos into order. Every document went into a plastic sleeve. Every sleeve got a printed label. Every section got a colored tab. And every tab had a number that matched my master timeline. Tab 1, trust transfer, account closure notice, and my mother's death certificate. Tab 2, fraudulent credit cards, statements, dispute letters, and application records. Tab 3, IP logs from Riverside Tower, and my work schedules proving where I actually was. Tab 4, Dr. Pritchard's handwriting report and authenticated signature samples. Tab 5, deed transfer, county registry packet, and the margin note. Tab 6, certified bank records from Carolyn Bell. Tab 7 Damages Summary, Credit Report, Denial Letters, and Fraud Affidavits. I made 3 copies of everything. One for me, one for the court, one backup, in case my father found a way to make something disappear. Then I filed the lawsuit myself. Mercer v. Mercer, civil fraud, identity theft, conversion of trust assets, forged property transfer. Damages requested $240,000. The filing fee was $350. I paid it with the last of my paycheck and ate peanut butter sandwiches for 9 days. When the clerk stamped the papers, I expected to feel powerful. I didn't. I felt terrified. But for the first time, my fear had page numbers. My father's response arrived 2 weeks later in a thick envelope from Conrad Pierce's office. The letterhead alone looked expensive, heavy paper, embossed lettering, the kind of stationery designed to make normal people feel poor before they even read the first sentence. According to Pierce, I was delusional. I was bitter about my failure to launch. I was exploiting my mother's death for personal gain. I was attempting to extort a respected businessman because I lacked the discipline to build my own life. They denied every allegation and threatened to seek sanctions against me for filing what they called a knowingly frivolous lawsuit. I read the letter twice. Then I read it a third time because some sick part of me kept searching for one sentence that sounded like my father remembered I was his son. There wasn't one. The hearing was set for November 18th at 9:30 a.m., Judge Elaine Porter presiding. I requested 2 days off from the coffee shop. My manager, Lisa, looked at the form, then at me. Court family thing, I said. She studied my face. Bad family thing, I nodded. She signed the request and added an extra shift the week before so I could cover rent. The night before the hearing, I did not sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, imagining Conrad Pierce tearing me apart with words I didn't understand while my father watched from behind a $1,000 tie. At 3:07 a.m., I got up and opened the red binder. Every tab was still there, every date, every signature, every lie with a receipt stapled to it. By sunrise, I was not brave, but I was ready. The courtroom made me feel smaller the second I walked in. My father and Conrad Pierce were already at the defense table, arranged like a magazine ad for expensive consequences. Laptop open, leather folders stacked neatly, my father in a charcoal suit, calm as a man waiting for lunch reservations. I sat alone at the plaintiff's table with my red binder under my hand. Judge Elaine Porter entered at exactly 9:31. Everyone stood. When we sat, she looked down at the file. Mercer versus Mercer. Mr. Mercer, I see you are representing yourself. Is counsel running late? I stood, and my knees felt unreliable. No, Your Honor. I'm representing myself. My father laughed. Not quietly, not accidentally. He leaned back in his chair and let it roll through the courtroom. Your Honor, he works in a coffee shop, he said. He can't afford a real attorney. This is a shakedown by a son who never learned how to make his own money. A few people in the gallery shifted. Someone coughed. My ears went hot. Judge Porter's face did not move. Mr. Mercer, you will remain silent until addressed. My father smirked and whispered something to Pierce. The judge turned back to me. You understand that you are accusing a prominent businessman of financial fraud, identity theft, and forged property transfer? Yes, Your Honor. Do you have admissible evidence? Before I could answer, my father muttered, loud enough for half the room. He probably brought a journal about his feelings. This time, nobody laughed. I reached into my bag, lifted the 4-inch red binder, and set it on the table. Thud. The sound cut through the room. Yes, Your Honor, I said. I have evidence. Judge Porter pulled the red binder toward her. For the first time all morning, my father stopped smiling. Tab 1, Your Honor, I said. She opened it. That is the certified record from Harbor Trust Bank, showing the closure of my trust account on August 12th, 2021. $65,000 was transferred into Mercer Development Group. I swallowed once and kept my voice even. That was the day my mother died. The judge turned the page. The authorization was signed at 2:15 p.m. At 2:15 p.m., I was at St. Catherine's Hospital, signing my mother's death certificate. The certificate is directly behind it. Judge Porter looked from one document to the next. Then she looked at my father. His jaw tightened. Tab 2, I said. 17 credit cards opened in my name between 2019 and 2022. I did not open any of them. The judge read the statement silently. Luxury retailers, I continued. Hotels, casino credit, Brennan and Company, the Langford Hotel, Silver Crown Casino. My credit score was destroyed. It dropped to 420. My father shifted in his chair. Were you present for these charges? The judge asked. No, Your Honor. Tab 3 includes work schedules and alibi documentation. One casino account was opened while I was working a double shift. A department store application was approved while I was on security footage behind the counter at the coffee shop. The murmuring started low behind me. Tab 3 also contains IP documentation. The applications trace back to Riverside Tower, Unit 52A, my father's penthouse. I have not lived there in 10 years. My father stood halfway. This is absurd. I paid for his schooling. I gave him everything. He doesn't even understand how family assets work. Sit down, Judge Porter said. Pierce put one hand on my father's sleeve and pulled him back. The judge's eyes returned to me. Continue. Tab 5. Your Honor. She flipped forward. That is the county registry packet for my childhood home. My mother left the property to me in her will, but the title was transferred under my father's control as collateral for a construction loan I never signed. I pointed to the photocopy. The margin. Your Honor. Judge Porter leaned closer. The courtroom went quiet enough that I heard papers slide under her fingertips. Then she read it aloud. Forged Caleb's signature. He won't check the registry. If he asks, say it's for tax purposes. He trusts family. Silence. Not courtroom silence. Funeral silence. Conrad Pierce slowly moved his chair 2 inches away from my father. My father's face had gone gray. Your Honor, Pierce said carefully, I need to confer with my client. Judge Porter did not look at him. No, she said, I need answers. Judge Porter removed her glasses and set them on the bench. The movement was small, almost gentle, but it changed the air in the courtroom. Mr. Mercer, she said to my father, you entered this courtroom laughing at your son. My father opened his mouth. She raised one hand. You mocked his employment. You mocked his lack of counsel. You represented him as unstable, greedy, and financially incompetent. Her voice stayed level, which somehow made it worse. And now I am looking at certified banking records, credit applications, IP documentation, a forensic handwriting report, a fraudulent deed transfer, and a handwritten note that appears to describe the forgery of your son's signature. My father's face twitched. Your Honor, with respect, these were family financial matters. Caleb has never understood how assets are structured. I was trying to protect him from his own irresponsibility. I felt the old shame rise automatically, like my body still knew how to obey him. Judge Porter did not. Protect him, she said. She lifted the trust transfer. You transferred $65,000 out of an account in his name on the afternoon his mother died. She lifted the credit report. You allowed or caused 17 credit accounts to be opened using his identity. She lifted the deed packet. You appear to have used a forged signature to encumber property left to him in his mother's will. Then she looked at Pierce, counsel. Did your client disclose the existence of this margin note to you? Pierce stood slowly. Your Honor, I was not aware of that notation prior to today. My father turned toward him. Conrad. Pierce did not look back. Judge Porter leaned forward. Mr. Mercer, I'm finding sufficient evidence at this stage to grant plaintiff's requested civil relief and to refer this matter for criminal investigation. My father stood. No, absolutely not. This is my son. This is a misunderstanding. Sit down, the judge said. He didn't. Caleb, he said. And it was the first time all day his voice sounded afraid. Tell her this is family. We can handle this privately. I looked at him. For 32 years, I had waited for him to sound like a father, not a boss, not an owner, not a man measuring my worth against his bank account. And now, when he finally called me family, it was because a judge was watching. You're not a father, I said. You're a thief. The words did not come out loud. They didn't need to. Judge Porter turned to the clerk. The court orders all fraudulent debts identified in plaintiff's filings to be disputed and frozen pending correction. Title to the Briar Lane property is to be restored to Caleb Mercer, subject to final verification. Restitution is entered in the amount of $240,000. Including stolen trust funds, credit damage, and related civil damages. My knees nearly gave out. She continued. This file will be sent to the district attorney's office. I'm also ordering Mr. Victor Mercer held pending review for contempt and potential perjury. Based on statements made in filings before this court, the bailiff moved. My father looked at Pierce. Do something. That's what I pay you for. Pierce closed his briefcase. What you need now, Victor, is criminal counsel. The handcuffs clicked behind my father's back. That sound was smaller than I expected. Cleaner. As they walked him past me, he whispered, Caleb, please. I'm your dad. I kept my eyes on him until the door closed. For once, he was the one who couldn't look away. The civil order was not the end of it. It was the beginning of the part my father could not buy his way out of. 7 months later, the criminal trial started in federal court. By then, the story had moved from family whispers to business headlines. Victor Mercer, the man who used to stand beside ribbon cuttings and charity checks, walked past cameras with his mouth tight and his attorney's hand on his elbow. Not Conrad Pierce, a criminal defense lawyer. I testified for 3 hours. I explained the trust, my mother's death, the timestamp on the transfer, the credit cards I never opened, the house my mother left me, the note in the margin that finally made everyone stop pretending this was a misunderstanding. Dr. Pritchard testified after me and walked the jury through the forged signatures stroke by stroke. Carolyn Bell from Harbor Trust testified about the certified transfer records. A forensic accountant traced the stolen trust money, the credit charges, and the loan proceeds back through my father's companies until the whole thing looked less like family confusion and more like exactly what it was. A pattern. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes. Guilty. Identity theft. Wire fraud. Embezzlement. Forgery connected to a property transfer. Victor Mercer was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison. He served 3 before parole. His development empire collapsed faster than anyone expected. Partners withdrew. Lenders panicked. Projects froze. Eventually, Gerald Preston bought what was left for a fraction of what it had been worth. People kept asking me if I felt vindicated. I didn't know how to answer. Justice does not feel like fireworks when the person in handcuffs taught you how to ride a bike. It felt quieter than that. He had lost the empire. I was still learning how to live without waiting for him to take something else. I sold the penthouse after the civil judgment cleared. Technically, it had never been mine in any emotional sense. It was glass, marble, chrome, and cold air. My father had built his life to look impressive from a distance, and that place felt exactly like him. Beautiful if you didn't have to live inside it. Half of what I received went to the children's ward, where my mother had worked for 30 years. I made the donation quietly. No plaque, no photo, no speech. Just a check in her name, because she would have hated anything else. The house, Anya on Briar Lane. I kept. The first night I slept there, the furnace clicked too loud. The hallway smelled like dust, and the kitchen faucet leaked into the sink every 11 seconds. I lay awake listening to it and felt more at home than I had in years. I painted the living room myself, fixed the back fence with crooked boards and too many nails, planted tomatoes along the side yard, because my mother always said store-bought ones tasted like disappointment, on Sundays. I make pancakes in the same kitchen, where she used to stand barefoot, humming under her breath while the first batch burned because she was too busy talking to me. Sometimes I still think about my father. Not with rage. Rage takes energy, and I spent enough of my life funding his shadow. I think about him laughing in that courthouse hallway, how certain he was that money had made him untouchable, how he looked at my thrift store blazer, my coffee shop job, my shaking hands, and saw weakness. He never understood what my mother did. She left me a house, yes, a trust, yes, but more than that. She left me the kind of love that does not need witnesses to be real. She left me enough memory to know I had been worth protecting before I knew how to protect myself. My father thought poor meant powerless, but when those handcuffs clicked shut, I finally understood the truth. He was the poor one. All he had was money. I had the truth, and in the end, the truth was worth more than everything he stole. If this story stayed with you, consider subscribing for more emotional family drama stories about betrayal, justice, and the quiet strength it takes to start over.